Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now on Jayden Daniels getting his first win as an NFL quarterback, also for Dan Quinn, also for the organization. They're 1-1 now after the 21-18 win over the New York Giants. So, before I get into all the game stuff, a couple of things. One, I will be doing another live stream Tuesday night. I believe Nikki Javala from the Washington Post will be able to join me. No guarantees, but that's how it looks right now. And then it's a long week because they have the Monday night game in Cincinnati. But I will also be doing a film. I say film review, but it's really going over some specific things from the game. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. Could be red zone, could be more of Jayden Daniels. And to be honest, I don't have the energy for that defense right now because there's so many issues. And I think it's going to be hard for me to get to that by Monday night when I record it. Anyways, let's get into the game because this was a much needed win. Now, how you feel about that, it's going to be up to you because in this league, obviously, they're always going to say, you're always going to hear that it's very hard to win in the NFL, and it is. So when you get a win, you celebrate. And I think there are a couple things that really jumped out from this game, some that are pretty good to build on. And there's obviously one major troubling aspect with this team right now that I don't know how much better it's going to get. And that's going to be something where you look and, that's going to be a season-long thing possibly. I also think that where they're at right now with the roster and everything, that this is indicative of who they are. There's a ways to go. I think one thing you should feel good about, 425 yards of total offense, 37 minutes of time of possession, but only 21 points. So let's dive into that. Again, this was a needed win. And it wasn't – listen, again, I think ideally you would like to have had them have a resounding win over the New York Giants. We know what's going on here. We know where the Giants are at. It's a team that's going to be teetering all season. But this is also a team that's kind of building back up. They are not at the point where you're going to say, listen, they should just steamroll the Giants. They're not that good at this point, but they need to build on successes. And I think that's what you can do here. And I think especially on offense, it's something you say, okay, can you build on this? Well, there's a lot to, I think, that you can like about where this offense is going and what they might be able to do. So there are definite aspects to build on. Listen, they had 7 scoring drives on Sunday. In 2 games, if Cade York was a good kicker, they would have had 12 scoring drives on their first 15 drives of the season. Now, Cade York wasn't a good kicker, so they don't have that. And every team can kind of look at some things, but that's how close they are. And then in the red zone, it's just got to get better. But again, I'll get into that in a little bit in a minute. So, but I do think that there's stuff to build. And this is a new offense with a young quarterback, new play caller, and yet they've been able to move the ball, and especially today. Now, so that's something to build on. The run, with Jayden Daniels, you're not seeing just glimpses of what he can do. You're seeing what he can do. You're also seeing areas, okay, this is going to get better with experience. This is going to get better. Seeing various things for the first time, it's going to help him get better. And so you see where he can get to, but we also know that, he has no interceptions in the first 2 games, no touchdown passes though either. The run game, Brian Robinson today, 132, 133 yards, really good power, really good vision. I'll get to him in a minute. And this is what Robinson said after the game. This is what I can do. And he also said it's about time. And I think we can all agree on that. Listen, last year, after week 2 of last year, do you know how many times he had 17 carries a day? You know how many times he hit that number after week 2 of last season? Twice. He had a game where he 17 carries and 18 carries. He had 6 games in that span with 10 or fewer carries. Like, that's just unacceptable for a guy with him. And also because this is who they are, right? You want to carve out an identity. It's going to start with that, because to me, with the run game comes attitude. And you see them, they actually had some really nice runs and some good run execution that I haven't seen in a while. And so I think that's a good building block for this offense. And listen, 37 minutes, you're keeping that defense off the field. We know they can do damage in that 22, but they are keeping them off the field. And so that's, but what you have to do to beat a good team, it's not just keep a team off the field. You got to convert in the red zone. And eventually, if you don't convert in the red zone, all these yards are going to be not empty, but they're not going to feel as good as they should, because they're in position to do a lot more. And I think that was the thing last week, is they were in position to do more and didn't. And offensively, there were plays available to be made that they didn't make. And there were plays today, or there were situations today where you're in the red zone, you're in the red zone, you're in the red zone, and they kept hurting themselves. But the fact that they keep getting down there is a good place to build. Austin Eckler, another guy I think you can feel good about. I think, he had, let me check his numbers here. He had 48 yards. I think it was 48 yards receiving, and then 38 rushing, and then 47 receiving. A good all-around game. And what you see from him too are those, he's able to swerve, and he's got some good hip movement and good ability to cut in very narrow spaces. And you saw that on the one draw play in the red zone where they should have set up a fourth and short. But it was all because of his ability to make guys miss and swerve through narrow openings. He looks much better than last year after he hurt his ankle, and he should, because he's healthy. But I know there were some doubts about him beyond Washington, but he looks good. And it's funny, because I said to him after the game, I said, "Do you feel like your old self?" He goes, he's like, "Yeah." And basically, he's like, "I don't feel old, but I do feel like my old self," right? He's an older version of that, but he does feel good. And I think we've seen that with some of his plays. I think he's going to be as long as he's durable, I think he and Zach Ertz will continue to help this team. And Zach Ertz did that again today. And, it's funny, he had 4 catches for 62 yards, a couple nice grabs. But those two are going to be big. And then Noah Brown, that's a guy that I know you've been waiting to see. I think what he's showing is that he can get open, and it's a nice, good sized target. How does he become? Listen, they don't have a number 2 receiver right now. They just don't. But can he become a guy who can be? Because really, to me, the number 2 and 3 targets are Eckler and then Ertz. Can Noah Brown, though, what they need him to do is do what he did today in the fourth quarter. Make a big play. Get that solo coverage on the backside, work back to him, open, make a big play. That 34-yard gain in the fourth quarter was huge, and it's good route by him, and he turned the safety around, or turned the defensive back around, cuts inside, nobody there, boom, Daniels hits him. And, I was going to get into this later, but one of the nice things on that particular play is it's what Jayden Daniels processed from earlier in that quarter. So in the fourth quarter, you remember there was a play where Daniels hits Brown on the backside again. And this time, in that particular play, it was a 3-by-1 set. So 3 receivers to the left, Brown to the right. Brown, Daniels starts to the left, works back to the right, finds Brown, and he makes a really nice grab on the play. Well, Daniels files it away, so he knows when he gets a similar route concept later in the game. It wasn't the exact same thing. It was 2-by-2. Brown was on the same side with Ertz this time, but the Giants defense was similar. And the way, the route where Ertz got to was similar to where he would have been on the other side. So it clears out some of that stuff, but the linebacker reaction, like they're not dropping back. And I think you got to watch to see if Daniels runs, but it allowed Brown to be solo covered on the backside. Again, Daniels works back there, finds him, just a nice job, good poise, good reaction, good memory, et cetera, et cetera. I know it was only early in the fourth quarter, but I do think it's something where you have that poise to remember this is what they did. So in this particular look, when you can work backside knowing he's going to be there, and I think that's something that Daniels does well, is he trusts those guys. And so I think that was a good thing for those two. And I'll be curious to see, the more Brown is incorporated in this offense, the more he knows the offense, what more can he do for this group? Can he become, again, if he can just today was a fantastic example of how he could help them. They just have to finish in the red zone. And then, of course, Austin Seibert, 7 for 7 with the field goals, just got here now. Only one of them was longer than 33 yards, but still, we've seen guys miss in those situations a number of times, and he did not. So credit to him, just got here. One of the things that's funny, because I was talking to Tress Way earlier in the week, and I just asked him about getting used to one kicker after another. I know as a whole, they're like, what's that like? He actually said, it's really easy because of how consistent Tyler Ott is snapping the ball. And so he knows, like, and listen, we all know what happened with Cam Cheeseman. He was all over the place and it was hard on Wade. And so here with Ott, it's consistent. Boom, 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 boom. So it makes it easier for the operation to succeed. And it makes it easier when new kickers come in like Siebert. And so like, that's a good job by that, so you can, obviously Siebert gets good credit. He got the game ball, but Tyler Ott does a really nice job snapping. And I think that's certainly a part of why I think a guy can come in and have that kind of success. And, you just got to finish. It also helped. Listen, we all know too that it helped that Graham Gano got hurt on the opening kickoff, which could have been a touchdown, but except for the penalty on Ballore. But Gano gets hurt, takes him out of the game. The Giants can't kick. So would the Giants have won? Possibly. But on that last drive, you're not taking a knee on the last drive to set up a field goal. You're trying to attack to the end zone. The whole game goes different if they have Gano. Don't know if the Giants win. Certainly hurt their chances of winning by not having him for sure. And the funny thing is, like, Gano popped up on the injury report, I think, on Friday. So some of those Giants reporters are like, why didn't you have – it was a groin issue that time. Today it was a hamstring. But they're like, if he was on the injury report, why not bring someone up even just to have active or something as an emergency kicker in case this situation arose? And it did. Washington benefits. There you go. With Jayden Daniels, again, and he's going to be fun to watch, folks. And I think you're already seeing that. And there are times you're going to have to hold your breath and times he's going to take your breath away. That's just his game. And we saw both today. You saw the hit where he had to go out of the game. But on that hit, if he was a 3rd and 13, so this is what stands out to me on the hit. Yeah, he got the wind knocked out of him. It was a really good tackle by the Giants defensive back. I can't remember, number 22, I think. Anyways, on the play, he scrambles up, runs through an opening, looks to the side to see, and my sense is he's looking at where the first down marker is. He sees that as soon as he looks over there, turns back upfield, 2 Giant defenders there, tries to get through him, and he does. Picks up 14 yards. Yes, gets the wind knocked out of him, but picks up the first down, no punt, continues it, and they go on to kick a field goal on that drive. So plays like that help you win games, and that's what he can do too. So, I think if it was a 2nd down, maybe he runs out, doesn't turn it upfield. 3rd down, you're turning it upfield. That's what he does. That's what he's going to always do because that's the kind of competitor he showed he was at LSU, and it's what he's doing here. So, but I do think like that's where you see some of that. And, he takes care of the ball. That's one thing Dan Quinn talked about. And he said, Quinn said that's one of the things that made him unique at LSU is the way how conscientious he is about taking care of the ball. And again, we haven't seen, you have to go back and look, but I don't remember any player like, oh my gosh, like there were times in the past where there was Howell, Heineke, where you just kind of like, oh, that's going to be a pick. And then it isn't. And, people joke about them having a horseshoe in their back pocket or whatever. You haven't seen that with Daniels. He hasn't had to be lucky with that. He's just been smart with the ball. Now, could he be sometimes more aggressive on some throws? Perhaps, but he's taking care of the ball. And like in the red zone, protect the ball, protect the points. They're getting the points. And, there are going to be some games where you're going to need way more than 21 points. You're going to have to convert on these. You may have to force a couple passes in the end zone. But that's where I'd like to see how Noah Brown continues to develop and progress in this offense and how he is used down there. Can he be a help down there? Because I just think it's going to be tough. And there were I'll get into the red zone issues in a minute, but there were a myriad of mistakes down there. It wasn't just one thing, which is always a problem. Penalties are a big issue. I went over the 34-yard play. I love on that play to Noah Brown, the 34-yarder, which set up that really got that last drive going. Just a nice start by Daniels as well. A really good throw. And I think that's a really good thing for him. And it's funny, this is a game that forced you to be patient. And the way that it was going to be hard to attack a lot down the field with that pass rush. So the game plan was absolutely to get rid of the ball quick, create some screens and the quick hitters to the receivers on the side with smoke routes, whatever you want to call them. And he does a good job operating that. He can operate with patience. While he made the big plays in college, the nice thing is he can play the position and what the position calls for. Today it was patience. Now they do, and then when there were times to get it down the field, he got it down to Noah Brown. So that's going to be a good thing as well. Getting the ball out, just keep moving the chains. They moved the chains quite a bit today because of that ability. And, there were a couple of times where, like, even in some times where he drifted out of the pocket or had to move out of the pocket, that he kept his eyes downfield, gets it to Zach Ertz on one of those. That's also, and this is one of those games too, we talked about this during the week, against man coverage, a lot of times you're just going to take off because the defenders' backs are mostly the defenders are mostly have their backs to you. Zone coverage, they're going to have their eyes on you. So that leads to gaps in the coverage. So if you can get out of the pocket, you have a chance for some plays, and he got that the one time to Ertz for sure. So, I think one of the things that I also liked with Daniel is, like, I'm telling you, when guys talk about him, it's like, it's not just throwing, blowing smoke and saying things. Like, they really believe he's a very poised young man, and I think you see that. In fact, Olamide Zaccheaus told me that Daniels was laughing on that last drive. That's because, again, like, Brian Robinson said nothing has phased him. But on that drive where I said, what is he laughing at? Is it just the moment that he's just having fun? He goes, well, if you remember the play, the 14-yard scramble where he didn't get out of bounds, or he did get out. He ran out of bounds, and Zaccheaus like, bro, you got to stay in bounds. He's like, I know, I was trying to. But that's where some of that happened as well. So, but the thing is, like, and this is what Daniel said too. He goes, I live for those moments. Basically, it's summarizing. He said, guys make their names in those situations. So this is, you want that kind of guy in that situation, and that's what he does. Players or teammates believe in him, they trust in him. You want a good leader. That's what good leaders do. They inspire belief, and people trust them, and they do with him. So, and he delivered. He delivered. He didn't need to throw a whole lot on the drive. It was a couple throws. I think his last two drives, he was like 7 for 9. Really nice job. He had the big throw and the big run, and that made the difference in the end. So now let's get to some of the red zone issues, because those were some issues. And I think it was like 4 false starts. There were a couple sacks, but there's also sometimes where just execution, if it's you got a touchdown. There was a 2nd down and 6 where Robinson runs around to the left side, and John Bates whiffs on his block, and Terry McLaurin can't hold his block. Both those guys, because of that, I think Robinson gains like 3 yards. You hold those blocks, that could be a touchdown. And so those are the little things. Then you have a 4th down and 1. You got some momentum. You're running the ball well. And then there's a false start. Like, that's the kind of stuff you have. It kept happening. And that's where, if you don't fix that, and the funny thing is, like, they spend a ton of time working in situational football in the summertime, especially the red zone. So that has to be better. And certainly, and you can look at play calls, whatever you want to do, but that has to get better for sure. And the good thing is they're in there. I think it'd be a lot worse. We've seen years where they're not getting down there enough. They were inside there a number of times today. So with how this defense has been playing. So, anyway, so that's where, whatever. But I also really liked how they ran the ball. And there were a couple of times where, and they will get into this more throughout the week, but the 4th down and 1 with Brian Robinson, 5 yards after, he gained 6 yards, 5 yards after contact, just lowers and runs. Someone else said he's running angry. And I agree with that. When you guys run angry, like that kind of stuff, you want to create an identity. You get runs like that where a guy just bowls through on a 4th and 1, you pick it up. Like, their short yardage runs were not good the last few years. That was really good. And some of that can be the way, the blocking, a lot of it's a blocking, right? You're not getting, when you're knocked back, that's really good for him. But that was also a nice vision by Robinson getting the left, but also just good power running through the guy. On his 32-yard run, one of the things I liked about this, Thibodeau was the left defensive end. Now, Brian Burns, there was one time in the red zone where Burns really played the zone read well. He stays square to the line and forces, like, Daniels keeps the ball, but because he's square, Daniels can't get outside, so he's got to try and cut it up. I think he lost a yard on that, but that was in the red zone. So they know he's going to try and run down there. But on this particular one, the 32-yarder with Thibodeau was left end. Well, he kind of he wasn't square, but he couldn't crash at the mesh point with Robinson. He's got to wait for Daniels. Is he going to hand it off? That little hesitation was all Robinson needed. Now, also on that, so Robinson's going to the left. If you don't have Daniels as quarterback, you're attacking the mesh point. That play is blown up in the backfield. And also, the other thing I like on that play, Tyler Biadasz turns Dexter Lawrence, whom I think is just a terrific player, turns him inside, seals it off. Huge play. Cosme pulling on the play. There's a tackle coming inside, takes care of the tackle. If he doesn't do that, it's a 3-yard loss. And then, so those were really good. And then Allegretti has a nice block too. And then I think the final thing off is Robinson with good vision and cut back up and 32 yards. But look at those little plays that happen in the backfield that made the difference. If there's no Jayden Daniels, which there is, but if there isn't, that's a tackle for a loss. If if Cosme doesn't react that way, that's a tackle for a loss. And then again, Biadasz just turning Lawrence to the inside, turn him outside, and that cleared up another lane. So all that was really good. The run game, I think, was one of the more encouraging things today to come out of today, was that, because that needs to be their identity. Not just, you just don't have to be the run the ball, but I think it's the mindset that it creates. And then it's going to help all aspects of this offense if you can do that. But you've got to do it better in the red zone. That's the number one thing for this week. Convert better in the red zone. Now, let's get to what didn't go well, right? And, defensively, just not a strong showing. Now, they did stop them when they needed to in the fourth quarter, but some of that was they don't have a kicker. So they were going to kick. So they're not getting points because they have to go for it on fourth down. And they stopped them. So kudos to them. One of them, though, is, Neighbors has the drop. It looks like a drop on the sidelines. So it's hard to say, you can't come away feeling great about the defense after the first two games. You just can't. And Mike Davis subbed in for Emmanuel Forbes today. I told you, people want to know, well, why isn't he starting ahead of him? Because he hasn't played well. And I think we saw that today, and they stopped using him at halftime. I was surprised that they were going with him on Malik Neighbors. I didn't like that. They know more than I do, but I was surprised at that. In the second half, they went Igbenogany, and then Benjamin St. Just at times as well. And St. Just, he does a better job of at least being in the right spot. And is he a perfect corner? No. But he also made a couple plays, a couple breakups on balls to Neighbors. So I felt like he did a better job against him in the second half. In the first half, there were a couple times with Davis where he got him on the crossing route. Now, on the crossing route, Wagner collides with him. And Wagner, I'm not sure what he's doing on the play, but it looked a little bit off on the play. But he collides with Davis on coming over. But even if he doesn't, I don't like Davis covering Neighbors on one of those crossing routes. And then Neighbors got them again later on a crossing route. Then he also had a couple times where he just attacked him aggressively inside on a catch, a little bit too far off, and then Neighbors could turn it, cut and go back outside for some gains. And so, but anyways, they took care of it, and they benched him in the second half. They did a better job against him in the second half for sure. But that was just that's a concern. The corner play is a concern moving forward. We know that. They don't, like I said, I think St. Just, you can live with how he's played for them right now, but you need more consistent play across the board, but especially on that other side, because look at some of the receivers, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr., next couple weeks, you've got to get better play. But along with that, you're going to need better defensive line play. And I think that, to me, is one of the things that has been most disappointing is, last week against Tampa, there were times they put more pressure on than you realize or than you remember because they just didn't get him down, but they were at least making him, make some plays. But what's disappointed me is the play in the run game. It's just it has not been good. And the tackles are getting moved, or they're, it's just, they haven't played. Allen and Payne have not played the way I anticipated. And today Payne was credited with a half a tackle. I think Allen had two. The linebackers are like Wagner and Louisville combined for 20 tackles. That's what, in an ideal world, the line is setting up those guys to make stops in the run game. But they're stopping them not because they're getting set up like that all the time. It's because they're not. the tackles aren't making plays. They're not getting off the blocks. They're getting moved a little bit more in double teams than I'm used to seeing. And then when it's single, they're not getting off like they have. So that's something I don't know what the reason for that is. If there is something with technique, my understanding with the technique is that they would show them like, hey, this is what we recommend, but you do what you have to do to get to where you need to go. And that's not happening right now. So that has to improve, because if you don't start stopping the run, you're going to face a lot better offenses than you saw today. Ones with teams with kickers, they're going to do a lot of damage. So then we're going to be left watching a team who has an offense that's building, but what is the defense building to? And I think, you look at this and they definitely need help on the roster. We know that. That's an offseason discussion. That's not going to change now. You can look at it in a lot of you can look and second guess whatever they did in the offseason. I still like where this team is headed down the road, but this defense there's a lot of concerns because you need to see better. And I think, that's something that's, I don't have the answers for that, folks. And I don't know that any of you do listening, but that's where they're at. And the tackles have to make more plays. Like Johnny Newton did play. Didn't really see him stand out like that. And, I have to go back and watch that. I thought Frankie Louver had a very active game, but man, like if you don't start showing up that run, I mean, Devin Singletary is a nice back. He averaged 5.9 yards per carry. That's just unacceptable. They're not going to develop as a defense if they don't improve in that area. And can they get better? Sure. There's still a new defense, but man, you want to see some better signs out of them going forward. Because to match where I think the offense is, where the offense can get to at some point this season. But they need some playmakers, and they did. Listen, St. Juice punched the ball out, and Jeremy Chin recovered a fumble. That was a big play in the game. And you look back, and this team did not turn it over, but they need, they just don't have enough dynamic playmakers on that line right now, and that's gonna, if Allen and Payne don't become what we thought they could be, what they have been, then it's going to be that defense is just going to have a tough time. So, and I'm not going to put all the blame on them, because there's a lot of other guys. Just their linebackers have to get up. The linebackers sometimes are trying to go around blockers, and it creates a bigger gap as well. So, what I do know is guys are getting out of gaps, and it's resulting in big runs. Again, they did stop them enough when they needed to. So kudos for that. Can they build off that? They're going to have to, because again, they're going to face, Cincinnati is going to be a tough one. Then you have Arizona. They had a big game today as well. So, it's going to have to improve, because if it doesn't, then, then it's going to be a long year. So anyways, folks, that's it from me. They get a W, feel good about that. This is a team that has to build on what they do each week, because we don't know where the finished product is. And the finished product is still, to be honest, is a couple years away, or a year. The finished product is not going to be this year, right? But the finished product this year, we don't know yet. But I think some good signs and a couple things that absolutely have to get fixed. Otherwise, some of the good signs are going to get lost in the shuffle. So, but at least with Jayden Daniels, you can feel really good about what you have there, and you can feel really good, I think, where this run game is headed, and that's a really good place for this offense to start. So you can hang your hat on that, and then you can worry about the defense later, but the defense you do need to worry about. So anyway, folks, that's it from me. I appreciate you tuning in after a W, and I will be back on Tuesday morning with some level of film review. Not sure what I'm going to go over yet, but I'll do something and talk about it, and then we'll have the live stream 7:30 Eastern time on Tuesday night. And that's it, folks. I'll talk to you next time.